Okay, so I'm sorry, my camera is I don't know where it is. Okay, so we're gonna begin, please, with this question that is gonna be the academic discussion. Okay, so let's do it without any preparation. Okay, we're gonna do that first. So here you have it. Your professor is teaching on a class. Can you please read from here until here? All of it.
Yeah. Your professor is teaching a class on education. Write a post responding to the professor's question. In your response, you should do the following. Express and support your opinion. Make a contribution to the discussion in your own words. An effective response will contain at least 100 words. You will have 10 minutes to write it. Professor, this week, let's discuss the use of standardized assessments in university admissions. While standardized tests provide a common measure of student abilities, they face criticism for potentially putting certain students at a disadvantage and not reflecting overall academic potential. Do you think the benefits of standardized tests outweigh the drawbacks, or should universities reconsider their use in admissions? Monique, students' posts. Also, this, right?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
all of
yes,
it.
all of it. Monique, I support universities moving away from using standardized tests for admissions. These assessments often overlook key traits such as creativity, and problem solving and social skills, which are significant for success in university and beyond. They don't fully capture students' potential and abilities, thus creating an incomplete picture of applicants. Raymond, I believe standardized testing is a vital tool for universities to assess applicants, considering the volume of applications that universities receive. Standardized tests provide a practical and objective measure to distinguish among candidates. Without them, making fair and accurate admissions decisions seems like an impossibly challenging task.
Okay, so with that being said, please write a response, okay? Containing at least 100 words. Instead of 10 minutes, I'll give you more. I'll give you 15 minutes, okay? So that you can have time to open your, uh, I don't know, your application and write it down. Okay, so please begin. You're gonna have 15. That means five more. Let's see how you write the answer, and then we're gonna see some techniques. Okay, so please, Victoria, send your essay so that we can review it.
I send it to you by WhatsApp.
Okay. Well, okay, so it says the class is about standardized assessment for admission process in universities. This process has faced criticism since it might exclude some students and not reflect their academic knowledge. Some of the posts written by student says that universities should change the assessment for the skills they are overlooking, give them an incomplete applicant profile. Okay. On the other hand, another student thinks that 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 type of tests are necessary, that type of tests are necessary to application process, since the quality of applications are high and this tool is practical, or it is an objective measurement that is able to select distinguished candidates. Okay, so we're gonna review some ways, some tips. Okay, and then we're gonna compare that, okay? So here we have some tips. Hold on. And I'm gonna show you a video on this. Hold on, where it is. Okay, so we're gonna review. Well, I think it's somehow long. Okay.
In writing for an academic discussion question type in TOEFL writing, in most cases, you're going to have to make an argument, choosing between two sides of an issue. There are some other question types as well, but in any case, you're always going to need to make an argument. So in this video, we're going to focus on some decisions that you can make to help write a response that's going to be as clear as possible in the argument that you make. So let's take a look at that.
So a question that will come up frequently for this question type is, should I only choose one side for this task, one side of the professor's question that they pose to you? Okay, now again, in most cases, you'll be presented with two sides of a situation and you need to choose one of those sides. So the question is, do I really need to choose one? And the question is a really good one, because in reality, in almost every situation and every scenario that the professor's question will present to you in this task, there's going to be more than one valid way, and definitely two sides of the argument that are going to be perfectly valid for you to argue. So you're likely going to see some gray area. You're likely going to see that there is some ambiguity, and it's not real clear that you would want to take one side of the argument. But what I want to suggest to you in this video is that for the purpose of TOEFL writing, for this task, it is going to be valuable and helpful to you to choose a side and just stick with it. Choose an argument that you can argue clearly and focus on that, even if you can think of multiple sides of the argument that you would like to present in your response. Okay, let's look at that issue in a little more depth. Okay, so the general recommendation of this entire video is that when you're trying to decide what to say and what to focus on in your response for this question, choose the easiest thing for you to write about clearly and stick with that. Okay, so in many cases, this could be your true opinion. Maybe the professor presents a question to you and you actually genuinely have a strong opinion about it. Great, that's probably going to be easy for you to write about. But let's say that that's not true, and you can easily see multiple sides to the question that the professor is asking you, which is also very likely to be true. Then the suggestion is, if you can choose a side that's easier for you to write about, maybe because you have more to say about it, or that you just simply, more ideas are coming to you quickly, more examples, things like that, that you can easily just get started writing. That's a good reason to choose a particular side, because you have such a short amount of time. You want to maximize your time. So that is important to do as well. The key point here is that communication, your demonstration of your own ability to communicate a clear response in your answer, is the only and most important thing about this. So even if you have an opinion that's not fully represented in your response, or you see complexity where you'd like to argue that, you just don't have time in 10 minutes to do that clearly. So the advice here is to choose a side and go with that as your main strategy. Okay, let's look at this more in depth. Let's take a question like this one, and we'll just read this out loud since we're going to focus on the response to this question here in the next couple of slides. So let's imagine this is the question the professor presents to you. The issue of personal responsibility versus collective action in slowing climate change has become a widely debated topic. Some people believe that individual actions like reducing personal carbon footprints are key, while others stress the importance of government policies and regulations. Which do you think is more effective in tackling climate change, personal responsibility or collective action? Okay, so the question means here, you're supposed to choose a side. Okay, is it more important, or is it more effective rather, for us to emphasize personal actions and responsibilities when it comes to tackling climate change? Or is it more effective to focus on things like collective action, public policy, focusing on what maybe politicians can do or large organizations can do to solve the issue? So as you could probably see very clearly, there are absolutely good responses on either side of this question, right? On the personal responsibility side, somebody might say, well, yes, every action counts. Each person reducing their carbon footprint can make a big impact. Changes in consumer habits can be another thing that individuals do, right? The individual actions on what they decide to purchase. Maybe we can convince people, or maybe people start buying less plastic or buying some other type of product that can be harmful for the environment. That could be another thing you could write about for this one. A cultural shift, maybe personal responsibility fosters a culture of sustainability and can influence others. Okay, you could write a whole essay on this, But probably as you're thinking about how to respond to this, you could probably also think of some good public policy arguments, right? That public policy has a larger impact, right? Collective actions achieve longer and more immediate results in many cases, right? You could talk about structural changes. Policies can enforce systemic changes that individuals alone cannot achieve. And maybe focusing on public policies reduces dependence on individuals. It takes some of the responsibility away from individuals who may or may not be very responsible or very interested in tackling climate change as an issue, okay? So the point here is we've got great arguments. We have plenty to talk about for both sides of this argument. And what I'm suggesting to you in this video is, even though you can think of multiple things to say about this, choose one side. You could choose public policy as your focus and go with that and make that argument in your response. And what I want to suggest is that's going to help you to make a clearer response and one that's easier to follow, okay? And it's just simply going to be easier to write in most cases, rather than trying to go into so much depth about both sides of this that you can create a convincing response. That's hard to do. It's easier to do to create a convincing response out of one side of an argument for this particular exercise on the TOEFL. All right, we're going to take a look at this sample response to that question we just looked at on the page before. Now, you don't have the sample student responses to look at for this one, but that's okay, because the main point we're trying to look at here is what happens in this response when the person tries to take both sides of the argument. Okay, so I'm actually not going to read this out loud. I'm going to pause for just a couple seconds, and you should pause your video and read through this response, and then we'll talk about it after we come back. Okay, so why don't you pause your video now?
Okay, so let's continue here.
What is this response? And what we're looking at is this. This person, what I want to suggest is this person has a difficult time making a clear argument and making a clear opinion in response to the professor's question, because they are taking both sides of the argument, right? This person indicates initially that they see agreement with both Robert and Lisa. Those are the imaginary students that you didn't get to read what they had to say, but here's the example of what it would look like to try to agree with both people. There just isn't enough space here to consider all of the factors in a complicated argument, like one that would need to be written about in order to convincingly write about both sides of this very complicated subject, right? What we see is in the middle, this person has started with an agreement with Robert, taking one side of the debate, but then right away in the middle, they switch to Lisa's point of view and talking about how that has value. The reader, a grader who's reading this is likely to wonder, well, where is the argument? Where is this person's opinion? The writer does a pretty good job at the bottom of saying, well, I see the value in both sides, and it's probably a mixed view. But what I want to suggest is you don't want to do that. It's going to be much better. You're going to be able to communicate much clearer your opinion if you just take one side of this and you're not trying to balance on both sides of an argument, okay? And imagine if you add language problems to this. We don't need to spend a lot of time reading through this one, but here's an example of a very similar response where there are language issues involved, grammar issues and vocabulary problems, right? If you're trying to take both sides of an argument and you've got some holes in your grammar or your vocabulary, it's going to become really confusing for people to read. The most important thing from this lesson is that communication is more important than complexity in your response. Focus on communication, take the easiest route possible, and where required, take one side of an argument.
Okay, so basically we can say what I told you before, that it's much better to take one side. Okay, so if you take both sides, it's gonna be a mistake. Okay, so in either case, you're gonna be presented, as he said, with two options. So you need to choose one side. Okay, you shouldn't choose, as he said here, for example, you have this response that is grammatically very well written and with a good vocabulary. However, as he said, it's an inconsistent response because you are taking both sides. Okay, so you shouldn't take both sides to the argument. Okay, you're gonna have two sides and you shouldn't take both sides. Okay, I don't know if you have any questions regarding this first part.
No, teacher.
Okay, so we're gonna continue. There are two videos more that we need to see, and then it's gonna be much clearer. Okay, so this was academic discussion, marking an argument. Okay, so then we have supporting opinions. Let's watch.
In the academic discussion question type, you'll be evaluated according to how well you can support your opinions. Let's look at how to do that in this video. So you're going to be evaluated on relevant and well elaborated explanations, exemplification, and or details. Okay, so that means you need to explain your ideas, right? You need to provide examples and or details. So you need to describe your ideas well in this. In other words, you can't just state a perspective, state an opinion, and then move on. You need to explain what you mean. And a good way to do that are exactly these three things: examples, details, explanations. Okay, so this is really not an extremely complicated concept here. I mean, we could look at a simple example to start. Let's have a simple opinion here. What's the best type of vacation? Okay, so I might say, and this is true for me, I might say sunny beach vacations are the best. All right, so we need some explanation of that. There's an opinion, it's stated, so somebody might want to know, okay, why? And the answer to that why is what we're looking for. And it's really not more complicated than that for the other opinions that you'll need to talk about in your responses. Okay, so a why for this: spending time at the ocean is fun and there's something for everyone to enjoy. Kids love playing in the sand and the water, and adults like relaxing on the sand. Okay, so there are some reasons, some explanations. Okay, so it's really not a lot more complicated in your responses for this essay. The topics are more complicated, but all you need to do throughout your essay is to make your argument. Sometimes you're going to be making your main argument. You may be talking about the other students' perspectives and presenting your opinion on those. And then you need to explain why. Okay, and so let's look at that. This is a kind of the core of a sample question here. It doesn't have all of the material for a real question, but this might be kind of what the professor's question would look like. Let's look at this one. Which do you think is more effective in tackling climate change? Personal responsibility or collective action? Okay, so is personal responsibility, the actions of individuals, is that more important than collective action, like political campaigns or organizations who can mount really large efforts to clean up a certain area or approach some certain environmental problem? Okay, so in this one, we might state an opinion down below. The opinion could be something like, in my opinion, collective action is more effective in tackling climate change. Okay, so here you're making your clear statement, okay, that collective action is the more effective thing. All right, now, if this is your main opinion in your response, it's your responsibility to elaborate on that, to say more, to explain why. And so an explanation for this one could look something like this. While personal responsibility is important, it's largely limited in scope and may not produce significant results on a global scale. Collective actions such as policy changes and large-scale industrial transformations can affect broader systems, leading to more significant and comprehensive changes to mitigate climate change. All right, when we're talking about supporting your opinions, this is the stuff that we're looking for, okay? It's not enough to just state a clear opinion on something. You need to explain why. And this isn't easy. You only have 10 minutes on this response to come up with some really good reasons to support your ideas. And so I'm not trying to suggest it's easy to come up with these ideas, but all we're doing is very similar to the screen we looked at before. We're just trying to say why. If your opinion is this, why is that your opinion? And it's your job to add detail so that we can clearly understand it. Okay, now let's look at a different prompt and go through the entire process here of trying to think through how we're going to organize a response that has sufficient amount of support and detail related to the arguments that are made. Okay, so let's consider a new question here. This week, we're discussing advantages and disadvantages of universal healthcare. Some argue that healthcare is a fundamental right and should be available to all, while others believe that a free market healthcare system promotes quality and innovation. Where do you stand on this debate? Okay, another two-sided debate. Okay, some would argue that healthcare should be a fundamental right, available to everybody, right? And others believe that it should be part of a free market system, okay, that healthcare should be operated like a business in essence. Okay, so where do you stand on this? All right, let's imagine we have to develop an opinion on this question, okay? And one of the students that's in the prompt is going to be named John, okay? And John says, I strongly believe that healthcare is a basic human right. Everyone should have access to healthcare, irrespective of their economic condition. Universal healthcare should ensure that everyone gets treated fairly. Okay, so there's one of the opinions in the question that you're looking at. So on this, we could use John's response and use it to forward our own argument. So if I'm writing my response in relation to the question and John's comment there, we could say something like, John's perspective, advocating healthcare as a fundamental human right, deeply resonates with me. Okay, this is a way to mention John. Okay, so you score.
Okay, some technical problems. I don't know what happened. Hold on, please. Something happened here. It was paused.
In the academic discussion question type, you'll be, so this is an exam argument. So if I'm writing my response in relation to the question and John's comment there, we could say something like, John's perspective, advocating healthcare as a fundamental human right, deeply resonates with me. Okay, this is a way to mention John. Okay, so you score some points there because you're contributing to the discussion by mentioning John, and you're noting that in your opinion, healthcare as a fundamental human right is the side that you're trying to take in your response to the professor's question. Okay, good. So this is an example of one way to present an opinion in your response. All right, now to support that opinion, let's look at a sample, some sample details that could be added as supports here. So I'm firmly of the opinion that universal healthcare can foster equality and provide a safety net for all members of society, regardless of their economic status. It's a key stepping stone towards a healthier and more productive society, and it alleviates the financial burden on families struggling with medical costs. Okay, so we've forwarded an idea here, and this is our section where we're explaining ourselves. We're giving the why to our ideas. All right, 1 to 2 sentences of explanation can be really good for each of your responses. You don't need to say much more. You don't have a lot of time or space to add much more detail than that. But this is the kind of detail you should be trying to do in your practice essays as you're preparing, thinking about how much detail you can add to each opinion statement that you make. Your goal should be to add as much as possible here. And so time yourself, see how much you can add and how much you're capable of adding within the time frame, because the more details you can compose there, the better. Okay, so that's the focus of this lesson, is simply adding enough detail, explanation to the opinions that you state. Now, here is the full prompt that for the question that we just looked at about healthcare and the free market system and all of that. Okay, we've got John's response that we looked at earlier, and we've got Natalie's response that we're adding to it. Okay, I'm going to put a link to a document with this prompt and this response down below. And this response includes some of the language that we've looked at so far. And it also is going to show you here, Natalie's contribution. Okay, so in this essay, in this response, the writer disagrees with Natalie. Okay, says, I find Natalie's stance less convincing, and makes that argument. And then goes on to provide detailed explanation about why. Okay, so I'll put a link to this down below, and you can see how the details come together to support the arguments in this very good essay in response to the question about healthcare. Okay, so look to that link down below, spend some time with it, study it, and then in your own writing, you should be trying to do very similar things, providing enough support and detail in order to get full points for that section of the scoring rubric for this item on the TOEFL.
Okay, so basically here's a response that would be like an example for us. Here we have this week we're discussing the advantages and disadvantages of universal healthcare. Some argue that healthcare is a fundamental right and should be available to all, while others believe that a free market healthcare system promotes quality and innovation. Where do you stand in this debate? Okay, so first of all, the first thing that I would note is that here they are using while. If you remember while, it was like it was a subordinated conjunction, and it was used to contrast, right? So instead of while, they could use where, they could use whereas, they could use those two options. But here, as we said in the lesson, they need to place a comma before while because it is an exception to the rule. Okay, so that's something that we need to know. They're using while, a subordinated conjunction that we saw in the class. Okay, so John, I strongly believe that healthcare is a basic human right. Everyone should have access to healthcare irrespective of their economic condition. Universal healthcare could ensure that everyone gets treated fairly. Natalie, while universal healthcare sounds ideal, in practice it could lead to strong wait times and could potentially lower the quality of healthcare. A free market system could foster innovation and provide people with more options. Okay, so here you need to do various things. First of all, John's perspective, advocating healthcare as a fundamental right, deeply resonates with me. So here you are basically saying that you agree with the first one, right? So in this part, you're basically saying that you agree with John. Okay, you're doing that like very clearly. And then you support that. You say, I am firmly of the opinion that universal healthcare can foster quality and provide a safety net for all members of society, irrespective of their economic status. It is a key stepping stone towards a healthier and more productive society, and it alleviates the financial burden on families struggling with medical costs. So here you basically supported, let me change the color, the first part, right? As he said, you're like describing your opinion in this part. You're describing the opinion of John and basically your opinion because you're taking one side, as you should. I find Natalie's stance less convincing. So here you're like basically saying that you don't find Natalie's convincing at all, basically, right? Because you're picking a side, and it's very important to pick a side. Okay, so hold on. While a free market system may promote innovation, it often falls short in distributing healthcare resources equitably. Universal healthcare implementation doesn't inherently mean a compromise on quality and innovation. The challenges Natalie outlines, such as potential inefficiencies or longer wait times, should be addressed via improved policy design and management, not by dismissing the concept of universal health. Accessibility should never be compromised for the possibility of innovation. Okay, so basically you're supporting that. You're basically supporting that. And as you see here, let me show you. Okay, so basically you are basically supporting the opinion that John is right. Here's why. And Natalie is not right. And here is why. Okay, so I don't know if you can right now understand the structure of what we're trying to write. Okay, so let's write down a possible answer for the one that we saw. Okay, so I don't know if you have any questions. Until here, do you have any questions? Victoria?
Can you go again to the other page, please?
To this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your question here?
That it, like, I need to have a position, but I also need to compare the other position, right?
Yes. You
Okay.
need to like take one stand, right? Take one side, support that side, and then basically dismiss the other side. So why it's like I agree with John because of this. And while Natalie says this, I don't agree with her because of this. Basically, that's the structure you should use. I agree with him because of this, and I don't agree with her because of this or with him. Okay, so you need to be very clear. You're basically dismissing, in this case, her points, right? You're challenging because she says that it would compromise quality and innovation, and you say here that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a compromise in quality or innovation. So that's what you're doing. I don't know if you have any other
Yeah.
question.
No,
Yes.
it's okay. I understand.
Okay, great. So here we could say something like, okay, I'm not gonna have time to write the answer, okay, the sample answer here, but we're gonna see that tomorrow because tomorrow is our last class. So tomorrow I'm gonna write a sample answer for this question. And then with that, because this is not a very, let me tell you that this is the easiest question, okay? So it's not like here we have a script. We don't have a script in this one because it's so short and I'm only gonna show you how to write it. But we don't have necessarily a script here because it's a very short answer. It's a very easy answer. It's not necessary. So it's like they made it very easy for this question. They made it very easy. Before it was before last year, before 2023, it was an essay and they would give you 30 minutes for the essay. So it was much longer than the first one. So it was much more challenging. But now they have reduced the size of this question, the amount of time they give you, and honestly they made it much easier. Okay, so you shouldn't be so worried about this one. Only try to write as we'll see tomorrow, uh, with that order, right? I agree with him because of this, and I don't agree with him because of this. Okay, so make sure that you write your point of view very clearly. Like you're taking one side, pick a side, as we said before. Okay, so I'm gonna see you tomorrow for our last class.